Okay, so I think the last bench project we have to go is to get the dash ready. Okay, I mentioned before that I have the original instrument cluster. Pretty cool. Got the Eagle, the Case Eagle. It's just really cool. I wish that it was worth it to me to have it rebuilt and make it work, but part of it would never work because the tachometer here drove off the back of the generator, which I don't have a generator anymore. It was long ago converted to an alternator. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to keep it, and I'm just going to stick it right back in the dash and just to fill the hole, just because it looks cool, and we want to keep this tractor all together as much as possible anyway. I had to, before I go any further, I spent some time, I don't think I filmed any of it, but this little portion right here was broken. So I scabbed a piece of sheet metal on the back and got my wire feed out and turned it down to its very lowest setting and just kind of tacked that all back together so it's good and solid again now. But anyway, this drops in here. I like so. Okay, got some keepers on the back of it. I had to make one new one out of some strap because there was one missing. And got that all. We'll put all those on there. And the nuts that secure that. I'll just finger tighten them here for speed and for essence of time. But yeah, so that thing's just always going to live there with it anyway. Not going to go away. And then we will move on to the actual instruments. I do not like operating something without instruments. And when I originally lost the motor in this, it was pretty wild. I had oil pressure. Oil pressure never went away on it. It was weird. I've never lost a motor in that manner before. But anyway, there's the original cluster. Pretty cool. We'll leave it in. But it also had these knockouts, and it already had an oil pressure and a temperature gauge in it. These two I had to knock out. They weren't in there. Or they were still, the plugs were still in there. So what's going to happen here is we're going to have our oil pressure right up here. That's, of course, just a regular old mechanical gauge. Got a line, 1/8 line that runs out to the block. Then we're going to have our engine temperature gauge, and it's nothing fancy, it's just a new one. Okay. On the other side, it's going to be amps, although I think I'm actually going to change that to a voltmeter rather than an amp meter. And then the fuel gauge to go that came with that sending unit that I worked so hard to get into that fuel tank. So this because of the design of the sender, this thing is on occasion it's going to show over full. I just couldn't bend the float right that it would go clear down and stop just at the right spot for full. So when I fill the tank, it's actually going to read full for quite a while and until it finally lets that float start to come down. Is going to basically pin it against the top of the tank. My main concern was knowing when it was getting low, because you just don't want to run these things out of fuel, because then it's a big then you got a hassle. You got to bleed it and what have you, and I just didn't want to do that. I still have the original case, or I assume it's original case ignition switch. So we're going to reuse that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's got good spring action in the start mode. Got 4 posts, so we can run everything on it. It actually has a spring mounted position to the left which was to use that preheater in the intake manifold. You would hold it over to the left for a few seconds and let that preheater warm up, basically kind of a glow plug, but just heating the intake air. And then you would let go and it would snap back to close. It would shut that thing off. Then you would turn it to start and fire it up. It would suck warm air into the combustion chamber, help it start easier. I have the original headlight switch. I haven't put an ohm meter on here or continuity tester on here, but I believe it works. It feels really good. Doesn't look that great, but it feels really good. So I hope it works, because I'm going to put it right back in. And that goes, let's see, I think that was right over here, actually. So that'll be right in there. The ignition switch goes in here. It's missing the bezel piece, so I don't know. I'm going to have to work on that a little bit to get it. But it even still has the original sticker here that says to start, put gear shift lever in S position and turn key to the start position. So I actually got some paint on. I'll clean that up, but I tried to keep that. The only thing that's going to be added here will be, there was a little light in here. I have no idea what purpose that light served. But I'm going to put a little LED in there, which will be that will be tied into the alternator, and we'll get into that here in a minute. I'm going to show you what I believe to be how to wire this thing. Now, I am not a wiring expert by any means, but nonetheless. And then the last thing over on the side over here is this master battery cutoff switch. So the power comes from the battery, the hot lead comes up to this, and then comes out of it and down to the starter solenoid. And so this thing, when you flip it to the off position, kills all power from the battery. So you don't have to worry about anything draining it, even though we won't have much of anything outside of some headlights. And I'm going to wire those up such that they won't be able to come on unless the key's in the on position anyway. So should be fine, but I just always get in the habit of, this was on there. I don't know if this was factory or not, but it was on there, so I'm going to use it. I like the idea of it, so I just get in the habit of just shutting it clear off so it doesn't drain my battery down. So that will be mounted on the side here. That comes through this big hole right here. I don't know if you can see that. So yeah, so that's where we're at. So the gauges are I bought all illuminated gauges. I don't picture myself probably much running this thing at night, but nonetheless, they'll be illuminated. Maybe I'll wire those into the headlight switch so they're only illuminated when I have the headlights on. That might make good sense, I guess. So we'll do that. Yeah, and now I guess I can try to sit down here, hopefully show you the wiring diagram. I've researched it quite a lot on some other YouTube channels. There's a guy named, Tractor Man or something like that, and he laid out a full schematic for wiring an old tractor, and especially one that's been converted to an alternator from a generator. So let me get my paper out and we'll go over this. Okay, so this is the way I believe the schematics will, the wiring schematic will work on this. So we start off, I've got a battery, obviously. It's got a negative post and a positive post. Positive, negative. The negative simply goes over to a ground. Okay, simple as that. The other items that are factored in here is an ignition switch. Okay, we've got the starter solenoid. We've got the alternator. We've got a master switch, that one that goes on the side of the dash, the master on-off switch. And I'm also putting a fuse block in this. Now, I didn't have one originally, but it's going to have one. And so So yeah, this is the way I envision this working. Okay, the solenoid's got a large post, of course, and the master on-off switch. Actually, that would be the ignition. Let's call this the master on-off. Okay, so the positive battery cable is going to run up to that. Okay, like so. Then let's see, maybe I should move this camera over on my other side. I'm right-handed and I realize I'm getting in the way of everything here. Put it right here. Okay, and then from there, the power will go down to the starter solenoid. I guess I would reverse those, but you get the picture anyway. And this is a 1 gauge battery cable. Okay, 1 gauge cable. Okay. Then of course, like I said, you've got a ground strap over here as well that just grounds to the frame. Then the ignition switch has 4 terminals on it. Okay, one is ignition, or basically just the run position. One is start. That's the one with the spring in it when you go to start it. Okay, and then this is the main power. Okay, right here in the center. And this is an accessory, or in my case, it's that one that has a spring-loaded backside to use for the heater. We probably won't be using that for anything. Okay, so from then on your solenoid, you got 2 more posts. One we won't be using because that one of them would normally go to the distributor in the case of a gas engine. This is diesel, so that's probably not going to get used. So just this starting one. So we're going to have power that runs from the battery to the ignition switch. Actually, it may come off of this now that I think about it. Because if I ran it directly off the battery, even with this shut off, I would still have power to that. So yeah, we'll probably come off here, go right here. This will just be like, this will be probably a 10 gauge wire. Okay, it's got to be pretty heavy. And then from there, the start, we'll have a start wire that goes down to the solenoid. Okay, that's what gives the solenoid power, pulls the contacts together, causes the starter to turn over then. And then ignition will run everything else basically. So I'm going to have one going over to the fuse block, and I think there's 6 slots in it. We'll never use them. We're going to use maybe 3. Goes there, and we will also have one that comes off the ignition. We've got the instrument cluster to deal with as well to power those lights. Okay, so we have the 4. So we'll run one up to the instrument cluster, just loop that around just to provide illumination on those. We will, however, we'll get to the alternator in a minute. So on the starter, now that I think about it, there is a neutral safety switch on the transmission, and so you got to come from start down to that, and then from there over to the solenoid. So this won't exist. A nice eraser. Anyway, you get it. Okay. Neutral safety. Okay. So it won't start unless unless you put the gear shift in S, which closes the contacts on this and allows energy to flow through there. So that will go through there. then, let's see. Now we've got to charge the battery. So we've got an alternator. It's got a post. This is the battery post. Then it's got two little connectors, and they're labeled 1 and 2. Okay. 2, that one we can just wire straight over to the battery post. Okay. That's where it actually does the charging. 1 is used, we're going to put a little LED, and I'm going to draw it out here. So we're going to, well, I'll just put it right here. LED bulb. Okay. And we're going to run a line from here to that LED, and from the LED to the voltmeter. Okay. And all that does, and I didn't know this till I watched all these other videos, this excites the alternator and gets it to charge immediately. Otherwise, alternators don't typically charge until there's demand or enough RPMs. Well, this thing never turns at very high RPMs. So by putting just that little LED, just a little bit of draw, trips and kind of tricks the alternator into charging right away, and then it just starts charging. So from the alternator, obviously, we go down to the battery. Okay. So that's, as far as I can see, outside of some, this actually, it just dawned on me, this will not come from here to that illumination. It'll come from the fuse box for the illumination of the dash lights. And I'll have the headlight switch will be in there. So everything will probably go through that and then over, so it won't turn on, because I will have, let's just draw a headlight bulb over here. Okay, and it's just got two terminals. One just goes to ground, and then the other one's hot. That will go to the headlight switch. Okay, and so from here we'll probably go to the headlight switch and then over here. Sorry, but anyway, you get it. So when I turn on the headlight switch, it will illuminate the instrument cluster and turn on the headlights. The only other thing I'm going to have is that I'm going to add a circuit to go to the backhoe. Now, since the backhoe is removable, that will actually just go to some sort of a connector that I can break apart. And when I put the backhoe on, I plug it in, and I'll probably have a work light on there or something. I think I probably am going to add a couple of flashing amber lights on the fenders for the rare occasion that I'll be moving this thing down the road. But I'll add those in. That'll just come off another circuit just to those, and with a simple flasher in there. And so that's kind of the basics of it. If I'm missing something and you guys see that, please feel free to post and let me know. But I think that that's how this is going to go. You know, I probably have made a mistake here, and I'm sorry for the erasures and what have you, but the long and short of it is we need to charge the battery from the alternator, and we do that right here from this number 2 post. We need to trick the alternator into charging. We do that by having this little LED in here. We've got to have start that goes through the neutral safety switch and then over to the solenoid. We've got to have power. So the main battery power will come up to the master switch, come out of the master switch down to the main post on the solenoid, but also will go to the ignition switch. So actually, now that I look at it, this will actually go to this side, not that side. Okay, and so we'll have power back to the ignition switch. So when we hit that key, it will run it down here, engine will turn over and start, we release it, it comes back, and then it powers up, and then of course the ignition, or just the run portion, is powered up, and that sends power over to the fuse box, which then will allow us to use lights. Because that's the only thing that we need power for on this tractor once it starts, is just accessories. So yeah, that's kind of the way it'll be. The instrument cluster, you know, I'll probably tie all the gauges, that one wire running around to tie those together. They should all ground just in their mounting, but I might run a ground wire anyway, because I painted the heck out of everything in here. And so that should be it. So that's basically the electrical system. So that dash has just got to go the rest of the way together. We got to get, so it snowed now, and it's been cold, and now it snowed, and so not going to be outside working on this for a while. So, so we might have a pause here before I've got many more videos to post, but as quick as I get back to work on it, we'll show you. Okay, so that's, like I say, that's kind of it. I'm out of projects. I got nothing else to fix, to put together on this. It's just time to put it all together. I haven't touched on the radiator, but there was nothing there. I mentioned earlier that I had taken it to the radiator shop, had them check it out. They didn't see any issues with it. Pressure tested it. It seems to flow fine, not have any issues with it. So they just cleaned it up a bit, painted it up, and it's ready to go. Yeah, I mean, I'm running out of things, so it's really just a matter of some good weather, and I'll get back out there and put that thing together. So stick with us here. We'll get this tractor done, and hey, I think we actually might be doing some sawmilling very soon here. A buddy of mine has a bunch of Western cedar power poles to saw up. They were the big high transmission lines, so they've never had lost pet signs nailed up on them or anything like that, and we're not using the first 20 feet of them or so anyway. So, and they've been right in his yard on his property forever, and so they should be nice and clean. We'll see, but we're going to saw those up for so we actually may have a sawmill video coming up here pretty quick. So everyone, thank you very much for your patience. I hope this has been informative. It's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. We're not done yet, but I'm really enjoying it, and we'll probably take a pause here and until we get some decent weather. So Skookum Sawmilling, please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell, and it'll let you know when I do post another video. So take care, and I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.